At 3:42 a.m., the stillness over Belgorod shattered. A streak of light tore through the night, then silence broke into thunder. The ground convulsed as precision-guided rockets slammed into the river's edge. In seconds, a cascade of pressure burst through the Belgorod irrigation dam, water and steel colliding in a roar that drowned engines, silenced radios, and swallowed an entire military convoy crawling beneath the ridge. What began as routine logistics turned into chaos. Surveillance drones hovering miles above captured the shockwave rippling outward, vehicles overturned, comms fractured, air defenses scrambling to respond. Somewhere in the dark, a single question echoed across command rooms from Kiev to Brussels. How did a precision strike so deep inside Russian territory become possible, without crossing the line into open war? This was not luck. It was coordination, technology, and timing, the kind only a NATO-backed system could deliver. If you follow real military strategy, not headlines, stay with us. Insight begins now. Hours before the Belgorod Dam ruptured, the operation was already in motion, silent, precise, invisible. In a bunker near Kharkiv, Ukrainian artillery officers stared at a digital mosaic of satellite imagery and live drone feeds. The mission? Disrupt a Russian logistics artery feeding fuel and ammunition toward the Belgorod forward operating bases. Intelligence flagged one critical weakness: the dam's control junction, reinforced with concrete but vulnerable to a well-placed kinetic strike. Above the clouds, an MQ-9 Reaper drone loitered at 30,000 feet, its multispectral camera feeding encrypted visuals to analysts in Poland. Each pixel told a story: convoys moving along the western route, radar arrays scanning erratically, air defense launchers repositioning. The target coordinates weren't chosen for spectacle, they were chosen to collapse movement. Destroy the junction and the low-lying convoy route below would flood, isolating a cluster of depots and armored transports. By 2:15 a.m., the green light came through NATO's liaison network. Target verified, whether optimal, no civilian structures within the projected impact radius. Ukrainian gunners prepped the M142 HIMARS, 6 launch tubes loaded with precision-guided GMLRS rockets, range over 70 kilometers, each designed to strike within a 3-meter radius. On the battlefield, nothing moves faster than intelligence. A forward UAV, modified for signal interception, picked up bursts of Russian radio chatter, commands to refuel, to form up, to wait for clearance across the river. The convoy didn't know it yet, but it was parked inside a temporary basin. At 3:42 a.m., the first HIMARS battery fired. The missiles rose in sequence, sharp, blinding arcs tearing across the night sky, each guided by GPS and onboard inertial systems. Russian radar detected the signatures seconds too late. Surface-to-air systems in Belgorod's outer perimeter activated, Buk-M2 launchers tracked, locked, and fired, but the intercepts missed. The GMLRS rockets flew low and fast, weaving through the radar clutter of storm clouds and terrain. The impact was surgical. 3 warheads struck the reinforced spillway, detonating in rapid succession. The concrete cracked, then gave way under hydraulic pressure. Within moments, 200 million cubic feet of water surged through the breach, turning the valley road into a torrent. Convoy trucks, fuel tankers, and command carriers were overwhelmed, engines sputtering as waves smashed them aside. In Kiev, the operations room fell silent. Screens displayed a single satellite frame. The dam collapsing in sequence, a column of steam rising where a base generator short-circuited. The damage was unmistakable, but so was the precision. No city struck, no civilians harmed, a military artery severed. And for the first time in months, NATO analysts realized something fundamental had shifted. HIMARS wasn't just reshaping battlefields, it was rewriting the limits of deterrence itself. By dawn, the floodwaters had carved new scars across the Belgorod lowlands. Russian command posts scrambled to restore communication as reports poured in: convoy losses, power grid failure, and submerged equipment. Within the hour, Moscow's Western Military District declared a full-spectrum alert. Electronic warfare units activated their Krasukha 4 jammers to blind Ukrainian reconnaissance, while mobile air defense systems, Tor-M2S and Pantsir-S1, took positions along the surviving infrastructure routes. From a satellite's vantage point, the chaos looked almost choreographed. Armored columns rerouting through backup roads, radar dishes spinning in search of elusive threats, and helicopter patrols sweeping the airspace. But what Russia didn't yet understand was that Ukraine's strike wasn't a one-off. It was a signal operation designed to trigger overreaction. At 6:10 a.m., the first Russian counter-battery fire began. Submerged and Tornado-S rocket systems unleashed volleys toward suspected HIMARS positions near Vovchansk. Their rockets tore across the border sky, but the targets had long relocated. Ukrainian crews had already disassembled, moved, and reloaded, thanks to NATO satellite guidance tracking every thermal signature in real time. What looked like retaliation was, in reality, wasted ammunition. Still, Russia adapted fast. By 7 a.m., electronic interference blanketed the frontier. GPS signals flickered, drone feeds degraded, and the once crisp HIMARS telemetry began to fuzz. Ukrainian technicians switched to inertial guidance mode, relying on pre-programmed coordinates and analog verification. A reminder that in modern warfare, resilience isn't just about firepower, but about maintaining function under digital siege. Over Belgorod, Su-34 fighter bombers thundered in low. Their mission: suppress any residual launch sites and re-establish psychological dominance. Each sortie carried precision-guided munitions, but the pilots faced invisible enemies, Ukrainian decoys. Dummy HIMARS launchers made of wood and thermal blankets lured Russian strikes into empty fields. Within an hour, over a dozen sorties expended ordnance on illusions. On the ground, local Russian engineers struggled to contain the flooding. Pumps roared and temporary barriers rose, but the water's force had shifted, filling low storage bunkers that held fuel and munitions. Secondary explosions rippled across the basin, brief and contained, but devastating to morale. Inside NATO command circles, analysts watched the data cascade. The operation's effect had gone beyond tactical damage. It had forced Russia to expose defensive patterns. Radar frequencies, intercept protocols, even the timing of command relays, all recorded, all analyzed. The HIMARS strike had become a live reconnaissance probe. By noon, Russia deployed the A-50U early warning aircraft to map incoming threats, and cyber units began targeting Ukrainian communication nodes. Power flickered in Kharkiv's forward base, messages delayed, one drone feed went black. For a moment, it seemed the digital counterattack was working. But as the skies cleared, another transmission appeared, a thermal image showing the Belgorod base's northern perimeter collapsing under soil erosion. Water, not weaponry, had finished what the rockets began. The message was clear: precision had replaced attrition. And in that realization, Russian commanders understood the real threat wasn't just the HIMARS. It was the intelligence web guiding it. By late afternoon, the situation in Belgorod had transformed from chaos into a full-scale operational crisis. What began as a precision strike had evolved into a systemic collapse of the local command structure. Flooded terrain rendered traditional logistics unusable, while intercepted communications revealed confusion spreading through field units. Russian commanders faced a new kind of battlefield, one defined not by territory, but by time, technology, and information. At 13:45 a.m., Russian engineers established an emergency command center 30 kilometers east of the damaged dam. Air defense coverage thickened. S-400 launchers locked onto patrol zones, and radar systems began tracking anything airborne within a 200-kilometer radius. Helicopter gunships patrolled the flooded valley, scanning for any remaining Ukrainian drones. But even as defenses rose, Ukraine's next phase was already unfolding, a multi-layered escalation combining deception, surveillance, and psychological warfare. Hundreds of kilometers away, a small team near Sumy launched a new wave of reconnaissance UAVs, modified commercial models with passive radar reflectors. Their purpose wasn't to strike, but to overload Russian detection grids. Within hours, radar screens across Belgorod lit up with phantom echoes. Russian gunners fired at ghosts, draining precious missile reserves. The true targets, long-range loitering drones equipped with SIGINT payloads, slipped through the confusion undetected. By 15:20 a.m., those drones began transmitting critical intercepts. Encrypted chatter between Russian logistics officers, coordinates of remaining fuel depots, and movement schedules of armored reinforcements. Each byte of data refined the targeting grid for a second strike. The HIMARS crews, now repositioned along concealed tree lines west of Kharkiv, stood ready. Their launchers were silent, camouflaged, their systems reloaded with GPS GLSDB hybrids, small glide bombs retrofitted to HIMARS pods, capable of striking up to 150 kilometers with pinpoint precision. At 16:03 a.m., another order was transmitted. Target Bravo, confirm wind vectors, fire sequence Delta 3. 6 launchers fired nearly simultaneously. The rockets arced higher this time, beyond the reach of most short-range defenses, and split mid-flight, releasing glide bombs that descended silently over Belgorod's logistical hub. The impacts came seconds apart, igniting fuel reserves and disabling power lines feeding the regional command. Smoke rose, black and columnar, visible even from the Ukrainian border. But what shocked observers most wasn't the destruction, it was the restraint. Every strike avoided civilian areas, focusing solely on infrastructure supporting the military corridor. Western intelligence analysts watching the live feeds understood the message. This was precision as deterrence, a demonstration of capability under control. In Moscow, the Defense Council convened an emergency meeting. Satellite imagery confirmed the scope: convoys stranded, depots burning, a once secure region paralyzed. Political channels buzzed with accusations of Western coordination, though no proof was presented. Officially, NATO denied involvement. Unofficially, its analysts quietly acknowledged what their systems had helped make possible: a strike executed within the threshold of plausible deniability. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the Belgorod skyline flickered under the haze of power outages. The front lines hadn't moved an inch, but the balance of modern warfare had shifted profoundly. Technology, precision, and timing had done what artillery once could not: cripple without conquering. Night fell over Belgorod, but the silence was deceptive. At 21:10 a.m., something unexpected occurred. Across multiple NATO monitoring stations in Eastern Europe, satellite feeds began to distort. Static flickers, blackouts, then nothing. Within minutes, the encrypted channels connecting reconnaissance assets over Ukraine dropped offline. Analysts initially suspected solar interference. Then came the confirmation: a coordinated cyber strike. Deep within Kaluga Oblast, a newly activated Russian cyber battalion launched a precision intrusion, targeting satellite relay networks used for HIMARS targeting synchronization. For the first time since the operation began, Ukraine's strike teams were blind. In Kharkiv's command post, screens went dark, telemetry vanished. The digital eyes that had guided their every move were gone. Panic didn't set in, discipline did. Manual fallback procedures kicked in, paper maps unfolded. Preset coordinates were confirmed via inertial systems, but uncertainty crept through the ranks. Every launch now carried a risk of drift. Every misfire could undo days of strategic control. Then, amid the digital blackout, another twist unfolded. At 22:30 a.m., a new radar signature appeared: high altitude, steady, not Russian. Western analysts identified it as an RQ-4 Global Hawk, operating at 50,000 feet under NATO control. Officially, it wasn't in theater. Unofficially, its reactivation restored the lost link, bypassing the compromised channels and re-establishing satellite imagery over the region. Within minutes, the cyber assault was neutralized, its intrusion paths traced and firewalled by joint US-Polish cyber defense units. Communications flickered back online. The map came alive again: floodplains, convoy remains, radar signals, all returning to clarity. But the twist was clear to every strategist watching. The battlefield was no longer defined by rockets or rivers. It was defined by code, connectivity, and the invisible war that decided who could see and who could not. By dawn, military analysts from Washington to Warsaw were already dissecting the Belgorod incident. What appeared to be a localized skirmish had revealed far greater truths about 21st century warfare. Precision, intelligence, and adaptability had replaced brute force. From a strategic perspective, Ukraine's HIMARS operation achieved more than tactical success. It demonstrated a doctrine of synchronized warfare combining US and NATO technologies: satellite-based intelligence, cyber resilience, and precision-guided strike capability. The system didn't just hit targets, it reshaped behavior. Russian units began repositioning deeper inland, stretching their own supply lines and thinning defenses elsewhere. The mere possibility of another precision strike became a deterrent more powerful than the strike itself. For the West, Belgorod became a case study in how precision can achieve escalation control. No civilian casualties, no deep incursions, just calibrated pressure, proof that technological superiority can paralyze a stronger opponent without triggering open war. It reaffirmed NATO's strategic vision. Modern deterrence is about decision dominance, seeing first, understanding faster, acting cleaner. For Russia, the lesson was harsher. The incident exposed vulnerabilities not in its firepower but in its command and control grid. The cyber disruption briefly gave Moscow an upper hand, but the swift restoration by Western assets proved a sobering truth. In the digital domain, NATO's reach is global. As the floodwaters receded, what remained wasn't just a damaged dam or disabled convoy, it was a shift in perception. The world had watched a line cross not in geography, but in capability. The HIMARS, once seen as a battlefield weapon, had become something far more significant: a symbol of integrated power, an instrument of precision deterrence under the shield of transatlantic cooperation. When the floodwaters finally calmed and the smoke over Belgorod thinned, the battlefield told a silent story, one of precision over destruction, calculation over chaos. What happened that night was more than a military operation. It was a statement on the future of warfare itself. The Belgorod strike showed that power today is measured not in tonnage or territory, but in the ability to control time, space, and information. Ukraine's success reflected
HIMARS.
years of Western
Stand by for
doctrine,
launch.
intelligence-led, technology-driven, and strategically restrained. Behind every HIMARS launch was a network of satellites, analysts, and systems unified under a single principle. Control the data and you control the fight. For the US and NATO, the message was unmistakable. Deterrence doesn't require escalation, it requires precision, coordination, and credibility. Each successful contained strike reinforces a global truth. Strength prevents chaos. For Russia, Belgorod was a warning that geography no longer guarantees safety.
Convoy submerged.
The invisible reach of
Objective
digital warfare,
achieved.
combined with precision munitions, has erased traditional borders of defense. As the world debates what comes next, one conclusion remains: the era of mass warfare is fading. The new battlefield belongs to those who can see first, decide faster, and strike only once. Because in this age, peace demands power. History isn't waiting, it's unfolding in real time. If understanding modern warfare matters to you, subscribe, stay alert, and never stop asking the one question that defines our age: how far can technology go before strategy becomes destiny?